Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds all of you well and in very good spirits. It certainly finds me in not just good spirits, but quite excellent spirits, in fact, because I am so thrilled to be joined by a very dear friend of this channel, and a very dear friend of me, a dear friend of all of us, and that is Mr. Seth Walsh. Seth, hello, my dear friend. It's nice to see you again.
Yes, sir. It's been about a year, I think, since maybe we last spoke, and it's nice to see you. And hello, all of Daisuke's viewers. I hope what we are here to discuss today is fun to listen to. It's one of my favorite subjects in the whole wide world. Gangster films, police films. It has affected my life in a profound way, very, very profound. And I hope that we were able to capture even a little bit of the essence of what it is that makes these movies great in this conversation.
Thank you so much. Yes, Seth. It's you're absolutely right. These genres are really quite something. There's so much to offer. There's so much room for discussion. So many opinions, so many views, so many takes, so many perspectives on these films. And yes, what we are talking about today are gangster films and police films. So these two genres of cinema and indeed of entertainment and the arts. So I would like to have a conversation, and I thought Seth, with his great knowledge of cinema and his great channel and discussions about all sorts of films, including the gangster film and the police film. I wanted to have a conversation with you, Seth, about your choices and your recommendations from these genres. So that's the topic of today, which is talk with Seth, our dear friend, about gangster films and police films. And I thought this would be, again, for me too, just not just a fun time to hear Seth's recommendations, but just an opportunity to get to know more about you and your film journey and your film tastes and the like, because after all, these are your choices, and I'm a firm believer that, and in the most positive way, I'm a firm believer in that the best way to get to know someone is by the films that the person recommends and likes. So I'm always looking forward to hearing that opportunity from as many people as possible. So today, Seth, my dear friend, thank you for providing me with that great opportunity to get to know more about you. So that's the topic today, is Seth's picks. So why don't we get the ball rolling? Why don't we get the get things started here? So why do we do this? What we can start with, this is a very casual conversation, nothing too overly structured. So why don't I ask you first, before you have any specific choices in mind, maybe just as a general statement, just where you come from in terms of your approaches to these genres. How much have you seen them? What is your general take and feel about them? Maybe you could just get the ball started with your general perspectives on the genres overall, and then we can go from there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your takes on these gangster films and police films genres as an overview?
Oh gosh, yes. Well, I know we decided upon maybe 1970s and onward for the genre, but just to give a little bit more of a backstory, I mean, we can go back to seeing Wacky Races, or maybe Batman the Animated Series, where you've got fedoras, Tommy guns, pistols, gangsters, and the like, of the classic stereotypical meh, see variety. You go back even further, you've got the black and whites and the same kind of cars and Tommy gun, gangster, crime, action. It's entertained people that are fans of movies since forever, right? I mean, these are sort of the seeds being planted about what we're going to be talking about. You know, we couldn't possibly talk about some of these films I've selected without maybe going back to the very direct source in the gene pool of the crime and police genre, as it were. But going through life and starting to get more, you know, you're a teenager and you get off sort of on the sort of more violent movies and what have you, and you get a little bit more experience watching them getting older, and they've left their impact on you. And you've got certain ways of talking in these movies or certain shocking scenes that stick with you. And you think about them like you do most movies, and it starts to come together what it is maybe the crime or police genres are being used for in terms of storytelling and exploration of the human condition, I would go so far as to say. And I'd like to go ahead and apologize to any viewers if I'm using any kind of esoteric terms or any kind of trying to sound smarter than I really am, because believe you me, this is so funny. I mean, I always think you remind me of Gene's picks on Seinfeld, you know, Seth's picks. You know, I hope this list or stack of movies and films that I'm going to bring up are even worthy. I mean, you've provided such a great variety so far in your 31 days of crime and police films so far. I've enjoyed huge, and you just have this signature way of selecting a wide array, and you reach farther. You know, you bring up in your discussions, maybe this is a stretch in this genre, but you bring up so well what would actually tie it together to the crime or police genre. And I hope that I can do that with some of these that I've selected. And I hope I didn't get off subject, but that's a little bit where I come from and how I appreciate these crime and police films.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. No, 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 that's great. And you yeah, you mentioned also the 31 days. So thank you so much. That's very, very kind of you. I'm I think it's such a these genres are so like wide in scope. I mean, any genre I think is like that, but there's something quite fun and also quite challenging in trying to uh, like choose. I mean, if one had to choose within, say, a number like top 10 or top 31 or something like that. I'm not that my list is a top favorites list per se, but it's just the actual choice itself I found very, very fun and rewarding, but also quite daunting in a way, because I would be constantly changing, just struggling how to limit myself, because it's such a far expansive genre that one can interpret. But that's part of the fun, and indeed, that I think that's one of the reasons why it's fun doing these sorts of things. So, and as you say, yes, today I forgot to mention. Thank you very much for reminding me, which is just in keeping with the 31 days, and in keeping with our discussions offline. Yes, films from 1970 onwards, and I admit that we are skipping over a lot of films that are definitely worthy of talk and discussion, and that's a lot of fun. But for purposes of today, 1970 and onwards. So with that requirement, and then the two genres being the requirement, let us begin. So let us begin with we can go maybe one at a time. So why don't we start with one pick from each genre? So one pick in the gangster film genre and one pick from the police film genre, each from 1970. So the floor is yours, my friends. Where should we begin?
Well, I'm so excited to ask if you've seen this film, because I only saw it for the first time very recently, and I mentioned it in some of my comments in your YouTube channel that this would have been a recommendation from my mom since forever ago, forever. And she would always say, "Oh, have you seen Burt Reynolds in Sharky's Machine?" And I would just be like, "No, I've never seen it." And then I got the Blu-ray, and this is an excellent pick that I would recommend in the police genre. And it went through my mind as soon as I turned it on. It's playing that song, Street Life, and it's playing that funky music as Burt Reynolds is just walking, strutting through that gutter and alleyway. And it's just a signature. Now, it's an early 80s film, but I just think Burt Reynolds had been so influenced through his expertise as an actor, because for those of you who don't know, he's also the director of this film, and he is absolutely applying his 70s style to this film. And from this excellent shot of the high-rise penthouse outside, it is a beautiful shot that gives this movie a signature style that is quintessential early 80s, 70s. And the fact that it's police, it's just so fun. And there's these dreamlike qualities as they chase the final villain and the end sequence. It is a must see, in my opinion. I was so excited to see that. So you've seen it.
Yes, I remember your comment on under one of the videos. Yes, and so I was so happy to hear that, because I think I think it's really it's a good film. And you mentioned that it was something that was recommended to you, or that your mother, right, was talking about it a lot. And also you mentioned too, it also shows Burt Reynolds as not just in front of the camera but behind the camera. And so it has there's a lot going for it. And it reminds me too of what kind of I mean, it's a really well made work. And it's I'm always, when I'm reminded about that, and Burt Reynolds's kind of efforts and the vision, it really it's a great example. So well done, to you. And I must ask you, what was it specifically that she mentioned, or what was it that was as in her example, or for her kind of enthusiasm for it, I wonder.
Oh, hold on, the name of the actress. I wish I could remember her name without off the top of my head, but she just mentioned how beautiful the woman was. And then you watch the movie and you see the sort of whirlwind romance with Burt Reynolds and her, and the ending. I don't want to give it away, but it's just this quite nice ending of them. And anyhow, there's a lot of drama that goes on between the girls in this other penthouse suite and the criminals. And there's a lot of very intense action involving a sniper rifle. She mentioned that, and how scary the final guy was, and how he just won't quite die because he's so hopped up on drugs. And she just expresses a lot of excitement surrounding the style and music of that movie. And I'm glad that you say that, because I oftentimes that I watch movies at just the right time in my life. There can be large gaps between watching a movie I've seen before, or I haven't seen one and I watch it. And now that I'm a bit older and I'm able to process things a little bit better, maybe they just mean, and I mentioned this earlier, a little bit something different to me now. It wasn't until recently that I saw this next recommendation of mine, and I watched this recently. And I'm sorry if you're going to talk about this on your channel, but we have to talk about this movie because it just leaves such a powerful impression on me every time I watch it and pay attention. And it's got a certain signature Italian style as well that I'm not able to articulate exactly what it is that I can sense about it that makes it that. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino, who you are talking about as a crime director maestro that he is, you can see where he's referencing the Italian style in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where Leonardo DiCaprio has moved to Italy, if you know that scene. And so I just think that there's so much about cinema that's right in this movie, Once Upon a Time in America, that, oh my gosh, there's so much to talk about. The crime aspects, where they're able to show just the stereotypical, like I mentioned, fedoras, Tommy guns, and cars, and it's just that on the surface. But like I mentioned earlier, we're using the crime genre to show something much more. And also on top of that, I feel like I could mention this about any movie, but the combination of pictures in that movie, the cinematography, the photography is also telling us something, and how the music blends from the background into the movie itself, as we've got the Ennio Morricone, who we will mention again as we discuss another police film later. But I just think that you mentioned it earlier, the art form. And here we have it, a combination of music, photography, crime elements. And I mean, how do we even talk about that movie with the fact that there's dialogue, there's a plot, but also there's so much in just the expressions and everything that's telling the story as well. The editing, I mean, that is causing my mind, at least, to think about so much more than just the criminal, violent things going on screen.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, another great choice. Yes, Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in America. And you're absolutely right. It seems to be uh, maybe, I don't know what the phrase is. I'm I was going to say playing with form, but I'm not sure if it's necessarily playing with form. It's actually, I think it's adhering to a really incredibly intricate structure, and because of its safe use of time and chronology and flashback, flash forward, depending on one's point of perspective. And as you say, music is interwoven in a way that is actually that's very, very profound. You mentioned Morricone quite rightly. Also, a type of rendition of the song "Yesterday," which is very important, and also it's a gangster film. It's a film about friendship, loyalty, betrayal, which is, I think, almost it's par for the course when we're talking about these films, right? But it's done so in a way where and again, without going too much into detail, it's done in a way where I'm not sure how to explain it, but like as you're watching it, you begin to question whether this is reality or this is a type of fantasy, and you could begin to question what it is one is seeing in a really profound way, because it goes to the idea of cinema and shadow plays and the idea of dreaming and what that might mean, whether it's a type of fantasy or even in the case early on a type of drug-induced hallucination, or if it's a real reflection of what happened in the past and one's own psychological traumas that have never been resolved, that have come back and are in one way or another affecting how it is we view the past. All these questions come to mind while telling this epic tale of youth and crime, and yes, and success and failures too, right? It's a film that's also about failures. Is it about successes? And it's also about mistakes, terrible mistakes that are made. These characters that are maybe not necessarily heroic anti-heroes, or perhaps even villainous, and maybe in some ways incredibly villainous and incredibly terrible acts that we see. And so it's while at the same time, right, we are still, for one reason or another, remain either captivated or enthralled or repulsed or disgusted, but we also remain with our attentions fixed on these to the very end. You're absolutely right. What a great pick.
Oh, and I just think that a film like that could never be made and not receive so much controversy maybe today. I just think that movie makers like Sergio Leone and others like him, Italian filmmakers of a certain era, could explore and show these violent things on screen and understand that the viewers would be mature enough to think about the things that we're seeing and kind of understand more of the points of the filmmaker. And I just wish there was more of that kind of exploration of film going on. And that's why I'm such a huge fan of your channel and viewers of your channel, and know that they are able to see these kinds of films and try to figure them out in a way that makes sense, and not just surface level, perhaps.
So it is, well, yeah, it is a very complex work. It is a very complex work. It's very challenging, and it does bring up things that aren't easy and are actually quite unpleasant. And also it brings up a number of questions that are very nuanced and also very unclear. But that is the point, I think, or that's one of the points of the film. That's something that I certainly get a lot out of, which is the idea of feeling confused and feeling like this is something that is we can question, while at the same time following the story, and while at the same time maybe not necessarily excusing a lot of the things, but at least maybe understanding what the circumstances might have been that led up to certain points of the film. Let me put it that way. So that is part of what the journey is for these characters. So yeah, and it's of course it's done, as I say, in this epic sweep, this tale. What we're seeing, what's there are moments that I'm seeing what is going on here. This is so almost like dream logic type of thing. It reminds me too of and I know this is what's so great about I love these sort of hallucinatory films, films that use editing in a way that, sometimes like the edit in a film can be used in a way as a type of film grammar to make sense of two shots. In other words, an edit is used to link two shots together and thus a create a kind of shot of that type of situation. So but here the edit is used in a way that is kind of creating more dissonance and more confusion. So I'm always quite amazed by this. It's a real feat, real feat indeed. Well done. It's an excellent choice, my friend. Excellent choice.
God, we could talk about all the cinematic flourishes, the frisbee, the cut to Robert De Niro looking in the mirror as it's changed the artwork. You recently discussed The Irishman on your YouTube channel, and I've remembered your conversation about that about a year ago, and I also listened to your words recently. I think there's a lot of similar themes maybe going on, and I want to re-explore The Irishman, as I was not a big fan of that when I tried to watch it. And I've kind of given up on it, but you have spoken so highly of it, and trying to think about how much I love Once Upon a Time in America and how it's sort of the same years-long journey we're taking that few films are able to do properly and well. And I just think that maybe one final statement on Once Upon a Time in America just does to the absolute masterful degree. And I just sometimes think that The Irishman couldn't possibly top it, but you've given me a want to retry that movie for sure.
Oh well, I might have mentioned it before, but the Irishman, the first trailer for The Irishman did something I thought that was really very clever in the way it used the sound conceit of a ringing telephone, and the ringing telephone over that first trailer, because in that film, the trailer of The Irishman, the Irishman's first trailer was making the emphasis on a telephone call, which was meant to be a very important and significant event in the lives of these main characters of the film, The Irishman. So this is Russell Bufalino and Frank Sheeran and Jimmy Hoffa. And so there's a very important telephone call that takes place. And so the idea of the ringing telephone was used to emphasize that. Well, I thought that was almost that this is Once Upon a Time in America, because as you know, the ringing telephone call, the ring is very important. Not maybe the call itself, but the ring also is very, very significant. So and it's very emphatic and incessant. So yes, well done indeed. So so Sharky's Machine and Once Upon a Time in America. So those are your choices going forward. But now let us keep going. So now, what are some other things that you would like to talk about in these two genres, my friend?
Oh gosh, so many. I hope there's time to just even run through them if we have to. But the police masterpiece that is, of course, referenced in a film that I loved hearing you talk about, Hot Fuzz, quite aptly, because again, we're using the police genre now to explore some different conceits. I just think that maybe I didn't express it enough, where these police films and crime films are about either a lot of themes that I enjoy that films are able to express for me, and I'm able to sort of live vicariously in a way through these films, where they're about fighting against a hypocritical system, maybe, or breaking free your spirit against forces out of your control, or trying to work outside of the box. And so getting to watch these movies and explore these philosophies, etc., and they're rooted in so many of the classic films, and they're going off in their own way, creative way. And in the instance of Point Break, we've got a surfing crime group. I mean, it is just funny. It's action packed. It is Keanu Reeves, Gary Busey classic, Patrick Swayze. It brings me such happiness to watch that movie, and I've seen it a million times, and never does it get old. The little hand says it's time to rock and roll before they rob the bank. It is just so much fun, and as a police movie, where you feel pumped about the hero, this movie has got it. I mean, from that opening scene of Keanu Reeves shooting on target range in the rain, and you just think of all these cinematic flourishes that they put in these kinds of movies that you can just feel good about watching. That is a police procedural classic, and how they'll take you to the edge. Some of these police movies that we're talking about in the genre are also about examining the effect on the psyche of dealing with crime and everything. So again, not to keep trying to put it on deeper levels, because really these are all just entertaining movies that we're talking about. But still, I think that as we talk more about these movies in the genre, we'll see that it's dealing with so much more than meets the eye. And I just think certain movies, like I want to mention a crime film I talked to you about, and I felt so good when you said that you think that this director's got not just the one I mentioned, but others that could be considered gangster movies. But I'm just such a champion of this box set, the Wong Kar-wai, and the movie and specifically that I talk about is As Tears Go By. And I just think, again, is there a lot of crime elements in that movie? Yes. Is it, well, as I talk about it and think about it, there's the whole Godfather character and crime elements like that. But when you think about the relationship with the girl character and his younger brother, the Fly character, and you see that this movie is using crime to show that this person's life is headed in one direction or the other. And that's something I'm trying to put words to as we have this conversation about these crime movies. I'm getting at a loss for words, and how these characters are doing really bad things, and yet we're still sympathetic to them. And we understand because they're trying to figure their lives out. And even though the things they're doing are extreme, I think we, the viewer, can sort of see where it can align with our own trajectories through life in a way, and the different possibilities of how your life can turn out. And it's through being close to or around certain things, or your environment. And I think that the crime genre and police genre are exploring those themes very much so. And Wong Kar-wai is doing it in a very, like you mentioned, hallucinatory, unbelievable way, visually and narratively.
Yeah. What are your next selections for us from the gangster film genre and the police film genre, please?
So I'd like to go off to something a little bit different in the animated category. Has anybody ever heard of this animated series, Gungrave, from the Madhouse Animation Studio? Have you seen that, Daisuke? Okay, so I'd just like to say, I'm not that big a fan of long television series, but this is about 25 episodes long, and it tells the tale of two young orphans that remain friends, and they end up getting involved in organized crime. And the story goes through many, many years of them rising through the ranks. They have a very nice godfather, they call it. It is a must-see, very great ending, satisfactory story. I wish I could give more away without, or talk more about it without giving away specific plot points, but I just think it handles so well a lot of what we've already discussed, and in animated form. And it's from, like I said, the same people that brought us Trigun, if anybody's ever seen that anime. So, and oh gosh, I wish I could name off the top of my head what else they worked on, but this is a well-respected animated studio, and that's the Gangster category. And it's uses some pretty supernatural elements at some point in the story, but I just think it's still classic gangsters, suit and tie, pistols, hitmen, that whole entertainment factor. So it is a must-see in my opinion. And again, it's only about 25 episodes long, so it could be watched in about a week, or if you're if you're able to do something like that. A crime film that I'd like to mention that I watched recently for the first time, Memories of Murder by Bong Joon-ho. Uh, I think when you bring up this movie, you could talk about so many other movies kind of like it in the police genre that are sort of more thriller. And we're looking a little bit more of the horrifying, like I mentioned, the effect on the police psyche. You're dealing with some very stressful situations that could change you as a person in a way and do things that you otherwise might not think you would do. And I think that's a very fun part about police movies is that you're seeing these virtuous characters having to sort of break character to do extreme things and do things that you otherwise wouldn't see them do to get to the fighting the crime and finding the answers, and I think there's definitely more going on in Memories of Murder, obviously, than what I'm talking about. Maybe I'm just talking about the detective character from Soul in that movie, but when I bring that up and you look at films like Zodiac and Seven and other movies like that you've talked about, you're starting to see the police movies where these police are going to some dark places and we see the effect it has on them. And I think that's a very entertaining part about the police film genre, or it can be.
Yes, that's an excellent point about, I think also how that might, in these stories, that might either help to enhance the investigator's ability to solve the crimes, or it might have the opposite effect of hampering or otherwise rendering it difficult or impossible for this particular person or people to solve the crimes, again, depending on the story and how it's handled. And I think the film Memories of Murder, as you mentioned, I think it has a kind of there's a real there's a kind of profound way that this film depicts that type of how should I put that type of edginess to the psychological portraits of the characters, and it does it in a way that is also very, I think, it does it in a way that's very almost exhilarating, and it makes it even more complex in the way that as much as it feels exhilarating, we are also reminded about how horrific these crimes are, and how difficult and how stressful this situation really is for this group of characters that are trying to solve these crimes, actually, right, in the plural. So yeah, excellent pick, well done. Yeah.
And you're looking at so many other movies kind of like that. Or there's a series I wanted to mention also in the police procedural, True Detective, season 1 in particular. Have you seen that? Where it's
Yes.
also sort of applying these very dark journeys that these characters are going on and very personal things going on the side that they're having to grapple with. And we're just seeing the wear and tear, weathered effect on these detective characters. I think that can be such riveting, fun entertainment on film or television. It's just been used time and time again. And I just love seeing the different directors and artists trying to show that in these different films, and we get the different styles, the different music, the different tones. I think that you could possibly apply the sort of same concept to this procedural crime thriller masterpiece, in my opinion. Mystic River, that's a good one along the lines of what we're talking about, where it's just a little bit darker. And of course, you've got others out there that are much more fun, maybe like Point Break. But then you've got the other side of the police coin where it's just gritty, dark, showing a little bit more of how bad crime really is. And I think those kind of movies can explore that very well. Gone Baby Gone is another one in that category that I could maybe put. Very dark, scary police. How are they going to solve the crime kind of movie? That would be one that I would definitely recommend.
Oh, excellent picks. Yes. So you're absolutely right. It can go in these kind of dark territories. And you mentioned Gone Baby Gone, and you also mentioned Mystic River and True Detective, the first season, right, with Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey, right? And so yes, so that has a really effective way of, again, using time and the effects of time and the past and confusion and also misunderstandings, and how misunderstandings can really lead to these really significant consequences, while at the same time, if there's the ability, and it also can lead to almost irreparable damage to human relationships as well. And I don't mean just physical, like the horrors of the crimes, but I also mean emotional, like the emotional character dynamics between and among the characters. As you know, it's a pretty complex tale. So and a lot of times it hinges on what could be essentially a kind of misunderstanding between characters, but it could have drastic consequences that can last years. So but that's also part of the kind of reward or potential reward for the viewer, to seeing if at all these seemingly irreparable damaged relationships can be actually repaired or not. So while at the same time trying to solve these mysteries. You're absolutely right. Yeah, it's great. That's a great series.
It definitely deserves a rewatch by me. I think it is absolutely excellent cinematography and story and acting. And Woody Harrelson with Matthew McConaughey was just the match made in heaven that we didn't know we needed until we watched the show.
Yeah. I don't want to say too much about. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just, before I forget, I don't want to say too much about the series, but there's one scene in particular. Again, not going into too much detail about. It's very quiet scene about a character, and you hear his kind of monologue, or not really monologue. He's talking about what he's been doing over the years. And he's talking about one thing, but you see him doing something else. And he's like sitting in front of the TV, like eating a kind of a frozen dinner. And it's one of these most startling juxtapositions of character. And so, and what's been going on over the years, it's remarkable. It's those quiet moments that are just so startling. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's that first season that does it the best. I don't know if you've seen the other seasons, but they mastered it in that first one. And I meant to ask you before I forget, have you seen the film with Vincent Cassel, Mesrine? It's a French film. And it's a two-parter. And I know we talked a little bit about films that do crime over many years. And I just would like to say that undervalued or maybe underviewed classic is worth seeing. I just think that not only the performance of the main character, but just the fact that it's a true story and we're learning so much. And also there's some very exciting sequences. And maybe I've read some of the criticisms that say that it's a little bit rushed, or we don't get enough to explore the characters. But I just think some movies you can read between the lines and get so much more without having to see so much or hear so much dialogue. And I think a movie like that, I value that, maybe there's only one or two scenes where he's talking to an ex-girlfriend or something like that, and it's only giving us just enough. And I can munch on that and not have to see it again and again and see a whole movie dedicated to just that. And because again, this is a movie about a man's life over many, many years. I think you can just take these little vignettes or scenes and add it up once you've watched both parts of the whole story and get a better sense of the character. And I think that movie does it quite well, and especially with the performance of Vincent Cassel.
Oh yes, I agree. That is that's amazing. That is really, and you're right. I think you mentioned, I don't know if it gets a lot of attention. It really should. It's absolutely fantastic. You're absolutely right. Well done.
Thank you. I really need to get that movie on Blu-ray. That's one that I don't own, but I just have always remembered from watching it many, many years ago. It's on Netflix, and I can highly recommend that one. Absolutely.
And then, so please continue. So I think you gave a number of maybe police procedural examples. And so now maybe we can turn our attention to some gangster film examples as well. So Please, once again, the floor is yours, my friend.
Well, while we're on a roll about maybe a television series, it would be impossible for me not to basically mention, if it's not my favorite gangster piece, it's in the running to be my favorite gangster piece, and that would be the television series The Sopranos. And I think that that television series puts what I'm trying to say with my words that I fail so very much at putting together in visual terms. That series captures a lot of these movies that we talk about. And I think that the creator, David Chase, really has an appreciation for some of these existential themes and things that we're talking about. And he's able to put them all together in this series so perfectly. I mean, it's a daunting task to watch that show, but over this past year, I would watch it and listen to this podcast by two of the main actors, Michael Imperioli and Steve Sciarippa, the Talking Sopranos. And they do like a 2 hour long discussion for each episode. And they have guests come on that helped on the show, and actors, and David Chase himself. It was quite a great experience. And I can just really value that time I spent watching that series again and reappreciating it and seeing what it's really hinting at and getting at. Again, if I'm trying to put together a gangster series, I'm going to say existential themes. Yes, please. You know, violent scenes with a little bit more impact and meaning behind them. Yes, please. You know, and these great biographies for each character in the show, you know, very much does each character. And even if they don't have a lot of screen time, you can surmise with what you see more of their background and everything. And it's saying so much about the culture that they're involved in. That's New Jersey, and the crime elements and the families and everything in between. And when I say family, and you see that it's taken away from other masterpiece films like, say, The Godfather, that's got so much to say about that. And, you know, we'd be here all day if we were trying to get at the root or heart of what I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, that these films are using crime as a sort of means to get at something so much more at the heart of why people are the way they are, or make a comment about violence, sex, and everything, because this environment and the crime and police genres allow so well to stage that. And The Sopranos using that stage, I mean, we're looking at a lot. If you haven't seen that series, wow, absolutely. Got to.
Yes, no, thank you very much. You know, I I was living in New York many years ago, and I was very fortunate to made a number of friends. One of whom is a dear friend of mine. My friend Vinny, Big V, he wanted me to call him. So yes, with great affection, one of my dear friends, and he loved The Sopranos. And at the time, I didn't watch The Sopranos. I didn't. It was still ongoing, so I didn't watch. He said, "No, you have to watch The Sopranos, Daisuke. If you're a fan of gangster movies, this is for you. Believe me." Was okay. So then I watched it, and it was I mean, it was okay getting into it. Oh, okay. I getting it. Oh my goodness, and then don't stop. You know, that's right. So that kind of I mean, just from start to finish, it was exhilarating, absolutely exhilarating. And then I mean, it starts, I mean, the way it finishes as well. I was quite taken by it, as I think many people were across America, across the world. And it's not just the references to The Godfather, which are fun. It's not just that. It's, as you say, there's this existential kind of layering, and the kind of threat, and not just threat, but just the types of feelings of, say, I don't know, like family living, and relationships between people, let's say between men and women, and and also just feelings of like pride and also insecurity, and how that can lead to really terrible consequences down the line, and how little things can turn into big things, and then vice versa as well, and how sometimes even the most important things remain those quiet moments, or maybe not so quiet moments, and you have all these great cast of characters. Absolutely, yes, yes, I agree. I agree. I've never spoken about The Sopranos. I don't consider myself to be an expert in it, but I agree. That is an excellent pick.
There's just so much room for discussion of being a fan, and the costumes and the dialogue and the characters, like anybody's favorite shows, and there's just that lore that's created that you can just go on and on about this little detail, that little detail, and it's just jam packed into The Sopranos. I love that series so much. It's like a lot of these movies that we're talking about have haunted me, and I just love it when you word that a lot of what you appreciate about some of these movies is the questions unanswered, that
Yes.
they're purposely unanswered or vague, or like when we were talking about Once Upon a Time in America, you talk about the editing and the confusion and the disorienting elements that lend so much to the effect the film has on you overall. And
Yeah.
films like that, and of course the ending to The Sopranos, and that cause you
Yeah.
to think about what it all meant, what you just went through. And I think that is in alone a statement, and
Yeah.
that's what makes it so powerful, that ending.
This is
Something.
great. This is great. Seth's picks continue. Please continue on. What else do you have in store for us?
Oh gosh, I think this is a great example again of a combination gangster, combination police procedural, and also starring somebody that I believe he just has the chops to be a gangster, good looking and dangerous. You know what I mean? That's what you want in your gangsters, right? And Leo, I think, especially in some of his earlier films like that, is just getting the chops ready for things that he would tackle later in his career. And of course, I appreciate in that film with the signature Spielberg touch, where it's just got the warm-hearted feeling there. I mean, he's at odds with the Tom Hanks character, but of course, like so many good films do well, you've got the rivals sort of being friends, and building this relationship as they go along. And I appreciate that we've got the police sort of having an understanding of the criminal character, and also in that film, like so many of what we're talking about, how do we have sympathy for these characters that are committing crimes and whatnot, and ones like that and so many others do well as show us how we can understand the perspective of the crook in a way, and root for them, and want to see them successful. And going back, sort of how I keep correlating it to the existential themes, these characters are confused. They don't know exactly what it is that they're doing all the time. There's certain forces at work that pull them along in these movies, I feel like, and it's just sort of like watching a train wreck that you know is about to happen. And that's part of the excitement of these crime movies, and watching how they're going to go down. And then movies like you mentioned, Carlito's Way, the other day in that excellent discussion, I just was so intimidated to leave a comment, because that's one of my favorite movies of all time, where you've got the criminals trying to get out of the game and they just can't. And it's just, we've got to mention that element to the crime films if we're going to talk about them. I mean, that they're not able to. And it's sort of, and again, I keep apologizing for making it the existential themes, but it's just that their situation and who they are, they can't escape. And I know that that's, yes.
That's great choices. Great choices. Gosh, let me just say one thing about Carlito's Way. Yeah, I love how you're absolutely right about this sort of existential dilemma, and how the main character in that film, he wants to get out of that world, and he wants to, what is it, paradise. That's his goal. It's paradise, and his little piece of paradise, that's what he's aiming for. And what's so intriguing about his path in that film, not to mention the fact how it starts, I mean, talk about time warps, and it's amazing, mind-blowing the way it starts. But the way in which he tries to get out is not, and what is hampering him, right, is not, and I'm trying to be as delicately ambiguous as possible here. I don't want to give too much away, but it's the idea of what is holding him back in that film. Is it stuff that he's done? Is it his, like, I don't know, bad deeds that have come back to haunt him? Maybe one can make an argument for that, but there's also an argument to be said in the other way, which is he is trying to help other people in essence, right? He's trying to help other people, and it's this act of trying to be maybe generous to his friends. It's these acts that one can say are really bringing him down more than anything else. So it's these acts of generosity that are, if anything, could be said to be his kind of downfall, or the potential, or his the threat to his attaining paradise. So that's one of the most intriguing aspects of it. So it's almost in a way, a very optimistic film in the canon of Brian De Palma, right, who's the director there, because Brian De Palma, I think, is known for a lot in terms of his brilliant filmography, but sometimes they can be very pessimistic works. But in fact, I think Carlito's Way is one of those in his catalog, arguably one of his most optimistic pictures in a certain point of view. And it's, I think, very unique in that way, and it's a great example of the gangster genre. Yeah, so I'm very glad you brought it up here. Yeah.
Yes, and just the time period that it takes place in,
Yeah.
and the soundtrack. There's so many cinematic flourishes that I've had to skip over just bringing up the different movies. I mean, any one movie that we've talked about, we could just focus on and talk about all these great aspects. When I think about Carlito's Way, I also think about this other crime favorite of mine since I was a teenager, especially with all the controversy going on with Johnny Depp. I love the film Blow. It's got sort of the same cocaine energy that Carlito's Way has, especially certain soundtrack scenes where there's this scene in particular with Casey and the Sunshine Band where they're having this big house party, and it reminds me so much of the Brian De Palma film Carlito's Way, where the camera is going through this party playing the disco music, and there's just maybe certain directors are able to capture that kind of energy and put it in their films, and it's just so fun to watch. And there's just numerous reasons why I love the film Blow with Johnny Depp, and you've got Ray Liotta in there, and of course his association with crime films, and just seeing his presence, certain actors' presence. I mentioned Leonardo DiCaprio, so many others, Al Pacino, that are just associated and not even quite typecast, maybe typecast in their roles as famous gangsters. I mean, it's just so funny to think about.
Oh, well done. Well done. Yes. So, oh gosh, Blow. I haven't seen that film in a number of years, but I know, yes, I know what you're talking. Yes, it's there is a type of frenzied energy to it. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Paul Rubens,
yes,
Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yes.
There is
a great cast.
Penelope Cruz. The fact that there's a very great short story at the beginning. I wish I remembered the name of the actor. He's that heavyset guy that is in Wolf of Wall Street and My Name is Earl and so many other movies. I wanted to talk about this dual Blu-ray that's gangster related. I recently watched A History of Violence the other day. I absolutely love that film. And here you have American History X. Also, if you want to talk about crime and the effects of crime, as we sort of hinted at in this conversation, there you have some very serious subject matter that is surrounding some of the stuff that we're talking about. And I just wish that we had the time to go so surgically deep as we need to cover what it is we're talking about more in depth. We've got so many scenes going on in these movies that are striking at the very heart of the genres we're trying to talk about. And I know maybe I'm going fast here, but you mentioned hallucinatory movies. Have you ever seen This Crime?
Oh,
Fun,
yes.
energy, great.
Yeah.
Maybe there's not a direct point to that movie, but I just think it's so much fun. Fun what they're doing. And also, these movies with crime and police, there's a lot of death going on where people die. And a lot of these movies are able to capture so well sort of the mystery of death and surrounding that. And there's a scene in particular at the end of Spring Breakers where I just think it's captured so well a particular character's death. It's just the way the camera and the setting and sort of the overall tone of the movie altogether is giving a sort of mystical elements that you just don't get in other movies. And I maybe mentioned a little bit earlier how the different directors are able to apply their own unique visual flair and style, all based around the genres we're talking about, to tell their stories or show their vision. And wow, such a big fan of that film. I love it. Gangster, y'all. You got James Franco. It is too funny, scary. I think it's scary. It's a very thrilling, fun ride through cinema, like so many of these are. Oh gosh, I know if I've had a bad day, I can just throw on Spring Breakers and just have it on in the background. And there's so many movies like that where just the overall feel and excitement happening on screen is just fun to have on. Crime movies are great for that. Shootouts, Tommy guns, cool outfits.
Please continue, my friend. Yes, this is great.
So
So you're on a roll. Please go on, please.
So appreciative of you mentioning this director, and we could talk about him again. And I apologize if you're going to talk about these in your last week of the 31 Gangster discussion, but I just want to mention Takeshi Kitano again. And this is the Outrage. This is just the first Blu-ray, but of course you've got a trilogy involving a different kind of gangster, the Yakuza. And there's just so much to appreciate in that genre. I guess you could just call it the Yakuza films, where you've got just a whole nother visual style that, okay, again, deeper themes, deeper things going on, cultural things. I am such a big fan of seeing these alternative views of the gangster genre. And I know you're a big fan of those films. And that's Gangster Kitano. And then you go back to his first film, Violent Cop, and you just know that this is a guy that is, again, like all these other directors and movies we mentioned, using the genre to show something really cool and get under your skin kind of movie that you just can't forget about. I mean, how many images in these movies are just so graphic and stick with you? And I think a lot of the argument against crime and gangster movies, you know, for the casual viewer, is just like, oh, they're so violent, or what is it about a person that would get off on watching these movies with all these graphic scenes? And I just think if you're able to get past that and see the intent, or even if there is no intent and that these creators just want to have this primal scream of getting out their artistic expression in whatever way. I mean, I'm just such a huge fan of that. And maybe that's getting off the subject of those two movies that I mentioned, but when you talk about violent scenes in gangster movies, or you at least have to raise that point when you talk about gangster movies or police movies, I think that Takeshi Kitano especially is able to use violence as a means of expression. And you have talked about it so well in your series of talking about his films.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, I love the works of Kitano, and including the Outrage movies. I think those are among the most stylish and quite nebulous gangster movies, and I love how nebulous they are. They're just so I love how confusing they are. You know, there's so many things going, so many characters, who's angry, who's rivaling, who's going on. That's I love that stuff, and just trying to figure out what's going, and then and then who's really planning, get what's being planned, all, but it doesn't matter ultimately, because it's all about the bravado and all this who's tougher than the other guy, and that sort of thing. And and the language and the speak and the talk, it's all, and the rhythms of the speech, that's all there. It's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. So yeah, those are great picks. Yeah, those are wonderful picks. And you're absolutely right too. The way that violent scenes are depicted, I mean, these films aren't for everyone. And you know, they aren't designed, I think, to be maybe enjoyed by everyone, because these films are right. They do depict some unpleasant things, and sometimes unpleasantly. So, but oftentimes we might get a way in which they're depicted, and they're shown for maybe a particular reason or a set of reasons, as well as maybe being great examples of the cinematic craft, as you say. So the editing and the stylings and the like. So yeah, totally agree with you, my friend. Yeah, well done. I like these choices very much.
Oh gosh, and still there's just many more than the ones I have. I hope that they have been good selections so far. I really meant to ask if you've seen this, because you talked about Training Day the other day, one of my favorite police or gangster kind of movies. And from the same director, David Ayer, you've got Harsh Times with Christian
Oh yeah,
Bale
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Freddie Rodriguez. And that's maybe one that not a lot of people have seen. And it's not maybe the best top of the line powerhouse of a film, but I just think there's so much style there that you could almost say is police and gangster, because he is trying to join the police force, the main character, and then certain things happen that might alter the course of his life. And I just think that there's a lot that can be taken away from that movie as a genre film that we're talking about, and it's just a lot of fun.
Harsh Times actually was a film that was recommended to me by a viewer, or by a number of viewers, in fact. And so I saw it not recently, but when did I see it? I forget. But it was recommended. So I think it's on a film that's on a number of people's radars already. So
I'll put that in my selection because there's another film by the same director. Oh gosh, I I'm such an airhead sometimes. I wish I remember the name of this movie with Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Pena. It's right on the
yeah,
tip of my tongue.
yeah,
You know the one I'm talking about.
yeah. Let's hold on. Let's look it up. Let's look it
Oh,
up.
I had it on my mind earlier.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that movie. I'm
Yeah.
pretty disappointed
The
in myself.
hold on. What is it? Here we go. Hold on. Let me just. Here we go. It is End of Watch.
Thank you so much. Yes, that is another gritty, extreme police movie that is using that sort of setting to tell an extreme story.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these movies that take place in these settings and are able to use the setting as well as David Ayer uses Los Angeles, we're reminded again of how location is so important to the story. I mean, and how that's a character in and of itself, and how important that can be to the crime element, depending on where the setting is. And when you discuss one of my all-time favorites, LA Confidential recently, and you think also same kind of thing, you've got Los Angeles as a character in a sense that's lending also to the crime elements, because you have a unique setting. I mentioned As Tears Go By earlier, and you got Hong Kong. I just love how setting can mean so much to each individual movie that we're talking about. I mean, again, to mention Once Upon a Time in America, you've got the New York of certain time period. I wanted to bring up another movie that many people love to talk about in the crime genre, City of God. So you've got Rio de Janeiro, and Sopranos, New Jersey. There's just so much to be said about where these movies come from. Violent Cop and movies like that. You're getting the different locations. Oh gosh.
Yes, City of God. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please. I interrupted you. Sorry about that.
No, yes, English crime. And it's just so unique how when you go to these different going around the globe and these genres we're talking about, and how that also provides another element that we have not even yet broached in these genres. And you get to see the different crime and police from around the world. And I just love that so much. And that's a favorite pick of mine, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, that I just showed there. And I enjoyed your conversation about Snatch very much. I love that movie as well. That is just, I haven't said it enough how much I've enjoyed your gangster and police discussions so far. I mean, this has just been so exciting to think about these movies over the past couple of weeks and months, when I knew that this kind of thing was going to happen. And still, I can't articulate as well as I would want to how much I love these gangster and police kind of films. And I still don't even own as much as I would want to talk about.
Thank you so much. You're very kind as always. And you mentioned a number of titles there. So I remember when Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels was first released, and it caused a kind of there was this, who is this, what is this film, who is this, right? That it was that kind of fever, and it just grew from there. And I think for good reason, it was so exciting. I remember that, it was that kind of, maybe it was in that maybe slightly independent circuit scene type of release there, but it was and it just grew from there. And so, and yeah, I remember that very well. Yeah, it was, what an exciting film that was to watch for the first time. Yeah.
There's
And
so
then
much to
also,
be
oh, I'm sorry, yes, please.
on well, there's just so much to be said, I feel like, about directors like initial works. And it's so cool that you mentioned that, like, who is this director? Wow, Guy
Yeah.
Ritchie. And it's just, I feel like sometimes these initial films, you can sort of pick up that essence that says, oh, this guy's really trying to give it their all, make a splash, make a name for themselves. They're applying all their influences and cinematic styles. And I just think that Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, especially, you could make some criticisms about Guy Ritchie's career as it went on, but not for me. Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, it has such an energy that you could pick up from a young up and coming director. And
Yeah.
that's cool that you mentioned that sort of fever that's surrounding the film.
And also, I wanted to say, when you mentioned the film City of God, Ciudad de Deus. So this is, as you mentioned, this area which the film covers, this Ciudad de Deus area, and it covers over a number of years. It's like decades, actually. Yeah, and these kids growing up, and right there, they're going through like kids, adolescence, and that stuff, right? Meeting people, falling in love, feeling rejection, wanting to feel accepted, all the while also handling these very horrifying situations about crime, murder, violence. Either they are directly involved, or they are in situations where it could just suddenly erupt in a moment's notice. What a film that is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And how that also, among other things, is a great reflection, or how should I say, it has a way in which it captures a type of atmosphere, and it because it seems to be part of this yeah, the atmosphere of it is it really is something else. And that was another film too, that when it was released internationally, that was the ripple effects of that, and the reaction to that, and it still remains to this day. What a film. That was a powerful, that is a powerful film, very much so. Yeah, well done. Yeah.
Crime and police. If you want to try to go between the detective and crime aspects of that movie, I'm also really hoping in your discussion you cover the French Connection with Gene Hackman, and especially with the recent Jaws live streams, you give us a chance to talk about another Roy Schrader performance, and that would just make me so happy to hear. I love that movie, and to have rewatched it after not liking it when I saw it as a teenager, and now after having gone through so many movies and better able to recognize some of the cinematic techniques that make that movie what it is, just so great. I really enjoyed watching that, and I watched, yeah.
Interesting. Oh, that's great. What, may I ask? So, do you remember what was it about the film when you had seen it as a teenager, and what was it about it when you had seen it recently that made you feel differently?
I think when I was younger, I just wasn't able to appreciate what we've been discussing in this conversation, the unanswered questions. I mean, there's a very sort of vague ending in a way of the French Connection. And if watching the whole movie, maybe I wasn't old enough to realize what the movie was driving at. It was sort of kind of hard to follow a plot in a way. Who are the bad guys? I mean, it's hard to describe. It just didn't appeal to me back then. But now rewatching it, and you see the editing, and I mean, when he's chasing after the perp dressed as Santa, and you just realize how movies were filmed in the 70s is not how they are today. It almost feels like you're actually on the ground with these characters. I mean, the car chase and everything, it's got this gritty element that you just don't get anymore. And I mean, even from the opening scene where the one guy is walking through the streets of where they're in Marseille,
Hmm.
in France, and
Yes.
again, you're getting the cinematography is just unmatched anywhere else, and you're that the fact that they're using those kind of techniques in a police film, I just think that there's so much more that's being said in the French Connection, and it hit me a lot more as an adult than when I was just like a kid and I had heard that the French Connection was one of the best movies ever, Oscar award winning, blah blah blah. Maybe I was going through a phase where I was just like only looking at the critically acclaimed movies, and when I reached French Connection back then, I didn't think it matched what everybody was saying. And now I can much more clearly see how it's a masterpiece. I mean, being reminded of the scene where the guy's in the subway waving at Gene Hackman, that is a complete delight. And the homages to that scene click in my mind now that I've seen it as an adult. How many times have you seen a guy get off a train and get back on a train, or all the famous train chase sequences, going back to Carlito's Way, of course. I mean, that
Yes.
is a train scene for all time.
That's right. Yes. Yes. And the way that New York City, the city, is shown, and part of the lifeblood of the city is the subway, and so the way that is used to great effect in that film in a number of sequences, and I think you alluded to the two big ones there. It's really quite that's quite a film. Yeah, that's quite a film indeed. So well done for bringing that up. Yeah. Yeah, I think did I have, yeah, French Connection. It's around, it's on my desk. Yeah, yeah, it might come up in conversation. Let me put it that way. Yeah.
Cool. I know you're a fan.
So this is good. So this is really, really excellent. So keep going here. So what are some other ones? Let me say here, so far you've given us a number of really great examples. Are these aren't necessarily, say, your top favorites or anything per se? This is not in any type of ordered ranking, right? This is in other words, it's rather just a reflection of what you're feeling right now in the moment, correct?
Oh gosh, yes. I just, again, thank you so much for even thinking I could create a list of movies in these genres that would mean anything at all. I mean, it would be, you understand, any different day, I'd be coming at this from a different angle and have
Yeah.
selected different films. There's no way to even possibly rank them. I mean, one day I could pick one of these out and just praise it, sing its praises, make it sound like it's one of my favorite movies of all time. But I could just about do that with any movie that I enjoy sometimes. I mean, there was a level of excitement that I expressed over some of the Jaws films, and and would probably agree they're not even anywhere close to your personal favorite films, but just in how you can talk about them just because of how fun they are. You can summon that excitement. I felt that some of these movies that I'm picking out, I could try, and maybe I failed in this conversation or I've jumbled my words up to express some of that excitement surrounding them. And I just only would be frustrated that I can't talk about each individual film to the degree that I would want to, because there's just so many individual pieces to them, scenes, mannerisms, little specific details that I just could talk about forever and ever and ever with excitement. I mean, there's this part in Once Upon a Time in America where Fat Mo, he's about to open the door for Robert De Niro. And because the film is so long, and only certain very long films can do this, allow for that little bit extra mannerism that says so much. He adjusts himself a little bit before he opens the door for his friend he hadn't seen in so long. And wow, certain films like that, these long films, and I think the gangster films, the gangster epics do that so well. Goodfellas, Casino, little details that we could spend so much time talking about that might not mean something so much to any kind of narrative sense, but when you see the scenes, you just know it's adding so much to the characters and making us like them, like I've mentioned before, even though they're bad guys or whatever, or they're police characters and they're doing something, morally reprehensible, but sometimes to fight the crime. It's just what great genres for cinema.
Well done. Yes, I agree. I absolutely agree. It's these details, and I apologize. Yeah, it's not always easy to speak about all these the way that one would like, because I too, yeah, I understand what you're saying when you say the details. It's the devil's in the details, as it were. And I totally agree. And you mentioned like Once Upon a Time in America. That I would say too. I mean, I guess I can mention it because it comes up rather early in the film Once Upon a Time in America, which is the detail. There are so many details in that film, but one of the ones that was so kind of creepy to me was in one of the opening sequences where you have a bed, and you have these essentially these killers trying to find a person, and a sheet is revealed. A sheet is removed from a bed, and you see this outline of a person with what appears to be bullet holes in the mattress. And it's such a weird thing. So weird. I mean, they're bullet holes, right? 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 I'm not mistaken about that, right?
That's what I see.
Yeah. So it's such a weird thing. And it looks so like I think, you know, what kind of killer would take the time, to do, you know what I mean? But it's so effective, and it makes its point. But wow, what a weird detail. And I love that. Like, and it's and there's a thing too with like the way that there's a way that someone gets injured, and the way that it looks, the hat, and the way it kind of like, the way the hat is changed, and something happens to the head or something, or there's a way that the characters are drawing in the sand on the beach when they're talking about what's the next big score, right? And talking, you see one of the characters in the background sitting on a lounge chair looking as the characters are talking, or there's a scene involving a car driving off into the water or something, or I can go on, and time, right? What is it? Age does not wither her. It's wow. And just the way that makeup is applied, and the way that, yes, I can go on and on. I apologize for not being able to stop and appreciate the detail. You mentioned the frisbee, though. Yeah.
That is one of my favorite cuts in any movie.
Yeah.
And leaves questions unanswered. What exactly happens in that scene? Who threw the frisbee? Why? I mean, unbelievable. And then the cut straight from that to another jump in time. It is just so much fun to watch. It really is.
That's right. Oh, please, but please go continue. Yes.
Well, I
have time. Do you have time? I'm still good for time. Are you okay with time?
Yes. I'm free all evening. Thank God.
I know that let me say too, I know that you also mentioned earlier when you were speaking about this film Once Upon a Time in America, you had said that you would be mentioning Morricone again. So I don't know if that's still coming up.
Yes, of course. I think you've talked about this movie with me before, but Ennio Morricone's score on that is absolutely heartwarming and heartbreaking as well. Very few films are able to fill me with the sweeping excitement of traveling alongside Kevin Costner and Sean Connery and company as we are. Oh God, I mean, the battle on that bridge and the music picking up. And then of course, there's an album that I've been listening to every once in a while. It comes on my Pandora. It's Yo-Yo Ma plays Ennio Morricone, I believe. And he does the Brian De Palma suite on one of those. And it's just a rendition of certain characters' death scene in that film that when I hear it, I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, that particular person deserved the award they got for that film. And oh gosh, I mean, again, that's one of the movies that I could just talk forever and ever with you about. I love The Untouchables. That is a police masterpiece.
1634, right? 1634 Racine. 1634 Racine, yes. Yeah.
That's where it
The
happened.
matchbook.
That's where the music
The
plays.
matchbook. Yes. Yes.
Is where,
1634 scene. You know, I used to have a friend who lived there. Yes.
and that character.
And the cigarette, he takes that the cig. I'm trying to be, yeah. When he turns and he takes the cigarette out of his mouth. Yeah. Oh wow, I love that scene. Yeah, that realization scene. Yeah.
I like it when he
Yeah.
takes out his pistol at the very end when Kevin Costner opens said matchbook and realizes, just like you said, I used to have a friend that lived there, and he pulls out that pistol and he looks just like what we talked about at the beginning of this conversation. Yeah, see, basically, where they are taking that classic gangster image and adding such a flair and style to it to make for such a fun final chase scene and that music.
That's right.
Arrest me.
That's right. Yes. Yes. And it's that film, The Untouchables. I mean, we mentioned De Palma already with Carlito's Way, and how there's a kind of optimistic ring, one can say, with a certain perspective on that film Carlito's Way. I think a similar type of thing can be said about The Untouchables. I really do. I mean, it's a very bleak world. It's a very violent and dangerous world, that's for sure. You know, Al Capone, Chicago, right, right. It's what Malone says early on. Welcome to Chicago, right? That's what he says. I mean, it's a really rough world where anything can happen. Things, you know, anyone can be a victim, right? As we found out very early on in an incredibly shocking scene early on, with a briefcase. And so it's, yeah, it can be a very topsy-turvy, violent, unexpected world. And so, but we have these very human and wonderfully rendered characters in the form of this kind of quartet, if you will, the Untouchables, right? What a great scene! You mentioned the bridge scene. There's a number of like thrilling, and the Morricone music, just it's triumphant and it's also haunting.
I wanted
And
to say that in your conversation recently of Reservoir Dogs, you used this great phrase that I've come across many times in my cinema journey, and I can't exactly describe it, but I know the feeling when I hear it. Nouveau vague, basically that sort of French New Wave sort of style of filmmaking. I think, were trying to apply to the film Reservoir Dogs. I think Quentin Tarantino is a great student or admirer of that kind of style, where maybe when you make a film, correct me if I'm wrong in the defining of Noville Vague, maybe, but it's sort of got a sort of dream-like quality in a way, or it's in such a stylistic way that it could be considered sort of, for lack of a better word, alternative to what you might expect to see. It's sort of adding a quirky twist, you know. I think that I wanted to bring up this movie as a sort of crime film.
oh yeah,
Because I think that sort of falls under the same umbrella of what I'm trying to describe. And when you've got Wes Anderson using crime as the sort of backdrop to say something about the psychology of his characters, or maybe make the overall point of his movie. And I wanted to bring up that point because there was a movie that I've talked to you about before, and it is before 1970, but it goes a little bit more into what I'm trying to set up right here. And that's the film Breathless, where I would like to try to classify that as a gangster film. And I would just like to bring it up briefly as a sort of why it's maybe one of my, if not my favorite film of all time, all encompassing in a very short span of time, exactly what it is that I'm trying to describe when I talk about gangster films. The trying to escape, your soul basically is trying to escape the system, and it's these forces that are out of your control that's guiding you to do that. I mean, the main character is so influenced by the criminal clothing and Humphrey Bogart's persona, and he's trying so hard to be a flashy gangster type character, and he just ends up being like a petty crook. And it's the images presented on screen and the ending in particular that I'm such a huge super fan of, that I feel like, you know, this was like his destiny or fate, and it was just, the whole movie is his propulsion to the end. And then I can't go into too much detail, but I just think that that is a overall capturing the essence of gangster films in a sort of very different kind of way. I hope that makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of images in that movie that would go right along with what we're talking about: the fedoras, guns, crime, existential themes. Uh, and when I
Yeah.
raised Bottle Rocket, I think that that is one amongst many films that were influenced by that film and those like it. The sort of, as we've discussed again and again in this conversation, the existential themes surrounding the crimes that are being shown to us on screen and why these characters are driven to commit these crimes, etc.
Oh, well, that I love how you explain that. Yes. And I think a great way to, and based on my own just my own very sort of maybe non-professional viewpoint, is kind of I have a viewpoint that is not in any way expert, but yes. So I think one way to describe Nouvelle Vague would be French New Wave would be one way would be how certain filmmakers apply techniques that could be said to have been existing in, say, the films of filmmakers like Jean-Luc Godard or François Truffaut. I mean, you mentioned Breathless, so Godard's work, Breathless. And so that film, as you know, has a lot of stylized technique that could be said to be, for lack of a better phrase, flying in the face of cinema convention, because it takes scenes out and puts them in a different place. It focuses in on one character in a type of two, where one would might expect a two shot. It focuses in solely on the face of one character while we're hearing someone else speaking. Our character might be driving and he just suddenly turns to us and speaks. Violence is depicted in a way that seems almost like sudden. What's going on? There's a field, what's going, and then it cuts, something else is happening. There's an ultra chic, cool aesthetic applied, and that's applied to the exterior, say, the iconography of film noir and pulp fiction as being digested by the artistic young intellectual class, among which Godard is a member, he's part of, and so he's digesting it and then turning it into his own. But at the same time, what's so great about it is it's a film that seems to be part of this, capturing all these styles and turning them on their head, and maybe using visual cues or imagery to be part of its story. But ultimately, the story turns and hinges on not necessarily in the intricate plot per se. It's not like an intricate, this turns to this and this leads to a betrayal. It's all about like the internal. It's essentially how it's a story about how a relationship turns sour, and how that can be over the most inexplicable reason. Maybe a person feels one day, oh, I don't like this person anymore, and that's a very human thing. And it's not to do with the intricate A, B, C, D, E plot. It's all to do with just that simple feeling that we all can experience. Either we felt it or we've had it happen to us. You know what I mean? Just one day we wake up and say, I don't feel the same way I did yesterday. And that can have ramifications. And that leads to that whole idea too of the existential, the dilemmas that you brought up when you're talking about like The Sopranos and the like. And so, yeah, that's a great choice. Yeah, Breathless. What a great choice. Continue on, my friend. This is great.
Okay, well, yes, I've tried to go and select maybe ones that you just wouldn't see anywhere else, or I've tried my best and consider them far-reaching, if you will, in the gangster crime spectrum. But I just really adore this movie. I want to say, especially after having recently seen the film Mona Lisa with Bob Hoskins, I have a further appreciation for one of my favorites, and that's this one, Unleashed, with Jet Li. And I'd like to classify that as a sort of gangster film, of course, because it's dealing with human trafficking and certain gangster connections with Bob Hoskin and other crime associates, and the effects that it has on the Jet Li character and his rehabilitation into normal functioning society and the harm that it's caused him. And I just think while it is an action sort of martial arts film, I just like to say that Gangster and martial arts go hand in hand. There's many other films that I could maybe mention that are my favorites that fall under that. Ong Bak, the Thai warrior I had mentioned earlier, sort of geographical location applying to the crime or police procedural films, as it were. And I just think that Unleashed, being another UK set film, and some of the actors involved, it makes it a very unique crime kind of film. And when I mentioned the offshoot of that, Ong Bak, as another sort of example that fits there, yes, I think that also falls under the gangster category. You've got these criminal elements that are setting the stage for what's going to amount to very, very exciting action. And in the case of Unleashed, you're getting also a sort of emotional bit too that I'm a big, big fan of. I just want to take a moment to appreciate some of the scenes that make that such a sort of powerful kind of film. I mean, you'll see a flashback sequence in particular with the Jet Li character as a small boy and his relationship to the piano. And yes, not to give too much away, but when I think back on what draws him to the piano and his situation, I just want to say that's a great, great movie. I love Unleashed. Weapons! Just to quote a very funny scene that makes me laugh with a particular character. But that's one also that I could highly recommend. You said maybe you would be okay with the big guns coming out, and I know you'll probably discuss this movie, but we've already talked about two of this director's other films. I absolutely have to mention Scarface. And while I might say that Carlito's Way, I prefer that film over Scarface, it would have been Scarface. And all that that movie entails, the cinematic flair and style, the quotes, the fact that when I would have seen it, there was this big cultural wave surrounding it. You know, you go to the beach and go into all these gift shops and you'd see nothing but Scarface t-shirts that are just these overblown, funny shirts of Tony Montana in the hot tub with his cigar, the world is yours, you know, but it's those images, and it's those images that I'm seeing at a very formative age. You know, I think it was like 6th or 7th grade that I saw Scarface, and it's just the music, the neon lights, the costumes. What can I say about Scarface that hasn't already been said? I mean, it is to me, and it's been so long since I've watched it, but I can just about quote the whole thing. And there's so much about it that brings me joy that I cannot critique it at all. Like, I can't dislike it. You've brought up Roger Ebert in some of your discussions, and I love it in your videos where you will mention maybe something that he said, or you just tie so much into the conversation about these films. It's so fun, and then you give it such a balanced eye in your discussions, and it's just so fun for me. I love Roger Ebert. He's helped me along my cinema journey. Leonard Maltin, all these other critics, but sometimes when they're looking at films from a certain angle as a professional critic, they're not able to put the words maybe, and this sounds so wrong to say, you know, I only want to hear what I want to hear, but they're not able to maybe give the same kind of excitement through their analytical kind of way of talking about movies, a point system or stars or whatever. It's not able for me to capture exactly what it is that makes a movie, for me to love it and appreciate it so much for whatever reason. As far as Scarface is concerned, obviously I give it a 10 out of 10 if I have to scale it because of the impact that it left on me.
Yeah, Scarface. Where can one begin with a discussion of Scarface? I suppose I could say, for me, when I was a kid, I saw Scarface on TV. You know, the TV broadcast version of Scarface. And if you know Scarface, if you know anything about that film and the language in that film, and even one of the special features that's on I think all of the releases of the film, you know, there's a little special feature about what the issues were with the TV broadcast version of Scarface. And I remember, you know, what's the line? What is it? Where did you get that beauty mark? What is it? Where'd you get that beauty mark, tough guy? Eating pineapple. So you know, right? So eating pineapple in the TV broadcast version, which we know is a totally different line when we get to the actual, whatever it is, the theatrical, unedited version, un-TV broadcast version of it. It's a completely different line. And when I heard that on the VHS, because I saw this on VHS, as many other people I know in my generation and many generations who saw this film on VHS, this was a big one. This was a big one. This was like as a kid, Scarface, this is the most intense, violent movie ever. It was, and you watch it, it was that, right. It lived up to that legend, that notoriety, and you watch it now, and this is so over the top, so outrageous, so offensive, so wrong. But that's the case for not just this type of film, and that's the case not just for Brian De Palma. That's this type of film, and it's made an impact in a way that is undeniable. It has caused so much conversation, which is also undeniable, and it's so in your face. And there are many things that are so inappropriate. Oh my goodness, so inappropriate. But that's part of it. That's why it exists. That's why it exists. And so you're absolutely right to bring up Scarface. Wow, push it to the limit. Push it to this thing. Like, I was so fascinated with how the camera zoomed down to the money counter, then the push it to, like, what is this? And the car, and the whole thing about the inside of the car, and how of course Michelle Pfeiffer's not going to want to sit in that car, of course, right? It's just, oh my goodness, what a great, and just don't get me started on I mean, it's probably this, well, I don't even want to, you know what I'm talking about. It's the scene with one of the very important let's say there's a character that gets a job, you got a new job, congratulations, so there's something that happens that causes a character to get a new job. Let me put it that way. It's huge. Yeah, Scarface. Yes, Scarface. This is something else. What a film this is. Yes.
Well, also, we mentioned a little bit about the language that's used in these sort of gangster films, and it's just we're able to watch people that we might not see in our everyday lives speak in such a way that we can get close to for entertainment watching these movies and sort of live vicariously through them, because I'm not going to act in any way, shape, or form like these characters. And so when I get to see them act in these rebel ways in these gangster films and police movies that we're watching, and I'm able to get as close to as possible through the power of movies, these rebel acts, and they're just so exciting. It is just such a sort of, I'm able to give a middle finger to the system through watching these movies safely. I sometimes feel like, I mean, just being able to watch these rebels on screen is just so exciting. And it's just been what people have appreciated about story all through history, the folk heroes and all this and that. And I mean, not that Tony Soprano is someone to look up to. It's very funny when you see the t-shirt wearing people out and about that seem to almost live by the Tony Montana mantra, as it were. Ironically so, especially because of the fate of the characters, and they're usually very, very tragic. It's still exciting to watch. I mean, we kind of mentioned that earlier, that they're all sort of train wrecks waiting to happen, these movies.
Yes.
And that's why we watch them go along and can't look away.
Yes, exactly. And that's really, that's a good point, which is that the Tony Montana character is I mean, it's not like he is totally without a moral code. There is a scene involving a choice that he makes somewhat later in the film about about an act of violence and children, that he makes a certain choice, which one can say in terms of the plot leads to the rest of the film leading to where it will lead. So one can say maybe he's not without a type of moral compass. At the same time, he does a lot of things that are very reprehensible. Of course he does. It's very almost such a flashy show of this reprehensible behavior. And a lot of the choices beyond that or outside of that sort of moral code type of choice, the other choices that he makes are really bad ones. So, or they could be said to be. And so there are, yes, it's a film that is about the rise and fall of a character that is, not, he's shown in a way that is not so glorious, but at the same time, you're right, there is there is also a type of a journey that he takes. Definitely, it is a journey that he takes, and there is no doubt that the character he is doing things on his own terms. That's no doubt at all. He's doing things on, and my goodness, yeah, things that happen, and things that happen to him, as well as how he reacts to that and how he asserts himself. I mean, that is part of the journey that he takes. Yes, Tony Montana's journey. Yeah.
I kill a communist for fun,
Yeah.
but for a green card, I kind of carve him up real nice.
It is oh my goodness.
Communist.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's oh gosh, so many things to say about that film. So many. Well, anyway, yeah, what a great choice. And you're right. I think a lot of times maybe people see the film as a nice work, look in a lot of ways to Carlito's Way, and I think that double bill works really really well. But Scarface, yes, Scarface. This is yeah, it's this is yeah. If you're talking about gangster films, yeah, well done. Yeah,
the cocaine energy that was brought from Scarface into Carlito's Way. We discussed Blow. Martin Scorsese, for various reasons, is obviously a master of the cocaine energy in his movies as well, and that leads us to some of his great gangsters that we will have to mention on our way out here. Goodfellas, Casino, same kind of energy, same kind of rebel attitude combined with the music to tell these stories. I mean, I recently watched such and such time, Wolf of Wall Street. A lot of these movies that we talk about going along with Scarface, a lot of gratuitous violence, a lot of sex and nudity and all kind of drug use and stuff like that. But I mean, there's no denying that is part of the fun. And a lot of people will say that this is sort of fraternity level of enjoyment with these movies or whatever. And I can get that perspective. I really can. I mean, well, hopefully you're not watching these movies for that kind of well, I mean, even if you do, that's fine. I mean, really, that's totally cool. Wolf of Wall Street is a really fun movie for a variety of reasons. It's hilarious. It's exciting. It's showing another kind of crime going on, maybe in the crime category, I would say, that is of a whole nother level going on, where these people are being bilked out of money in a sort of morally dubious sort of way. And yet still, like I mentioned earlier, we're rooting for these characters in a way because of how they're acting or the way they're talking. And it's just bringing about a smile on my face sometimes, even though what's going on is outrageous and sort of just totally over the top. So, I mean, how can I describe that I enjoy these scenes out loud in a way that makes sense? I mean, but that's just part of the fun. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio throwing a little person at a bullseye in The Office. I mean, Martin Scorsese, I guess, is what I was trying to get at when I brought up Wolf of Wall Street, and get more at what makes his gangster movies so fun. I mean, when he's able to give the Rolling Stones into his movies and you see more of the rebel attitude that he puts into his gangster movies, he is a master.
So what would be some of the gangster films, the Scorsese films, that would come to you, for example?
Casino is probably my favorite out of all of his. It is a very long film. I think it's maybe not as fast and exciting as Goodfellas in a way. A lot of people say Goodfellas they prefer over Casino, but I've just thought so much about Casino as I've watched it all of my life again and again and again and again. I just think it is probably, with everything that we've talked about, at least in the top 3 gangster films of mine. Favorite. I love Casino. Ace Rothstein. Wow.
Yeah.
Blueberries.
Yeah, blueberries. Yeah, an equal number of blueberries in each muffin. Do you know how much time? I don't care how much time it's going to take. Yes, that's why Ace Rothstein was. That's why he was hired to do the job, right? For the Tangiers because of this precision. But right when his emotion comes in, right when it begins to affect him, right with Ginger and his relationship with Ginger and right, and James Woods' character, and then later, right, Nikki Santoro. What happens to yes, of course, and not to mention, right, Frank Vincent. We have to mention Frank Vincent. Yes, yes.
Oh, I would also like to say, while we mentioned specific actors, rest in peace, Paul Herman.
Oh
I think
yes.
you might know. I showed up in Once Upon a Time in America recently, Sopranos, Beansy, if you remember that character. And I just like to raise him as a great character actor in the gangster genre, because when you say Frank Vincent, I mean, gosh, how many faces? And I mentioned the word typecast earlier, and I would hate to take anything away from these people, but the ones that have made their career sort of in the gangster category, bravo. Frank Vincent specifically, what a great guy. Raging Bull especially. I just like love that movie. Criterion. That I would honestly put Raging Bull in a way. The gangster.
Yes.
I mean, that we could have spent the whole discussion talking about. That is my favorite movie of all time, or one of. I mean, God, Raging Bull.
You can look at the films like Raging Bull, The Goodfellas to Casino, and you look at the transition of the Joe Pesci character, Frank Vincent character, and what happens in that relationship. You go from Raging Bull, what happens there, and you go to Goodfellas, what happens in that relation, and then you go to Casino, and you find out what happens. So it's this interesting progression of that relationship. And one could say that maybe, for lack of a better phrase, maybe the tables slowly get turned, shall we say, as we get from one film to the other. It's so I look at that trilogy of films as the Frank Vincent, Joe Pesci, Martin Scorsese trilogy. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love mentioning when the directors use similar actors. Going back to Wong Kar-wai from earlier, he uses some of the same actors in his films, and I think it's so much fun to watch the progression and sort of try, at least your imaginations, making little ties between films and how they relate to each other in various ways. And you speak about it so well right there with the Martin Scorsese filmography. We've talked about Robert De Niro quite a bit today, and I just want to, his mannerisms and everything adds so much to what we're talking about. I do want to make one recommendation that just popped in my head. I'm so down on myself for not raising this earlier. I don't know if you've seen this show, and when I said Pulp Entertainment, it reminded me of one of my favorite new shows, Peaky Blinders with Cillian Murphy. Have you ever heard of it?
I've heard of it. No, yes, I heard of it, but I haven't seen it. No.
So I just like to say I don't classify it as high on a scale as Godfather or something like that that leaves such a strong impact. But I love this show, Daisuke. There's some really entertaining performances, and it is nothing but a nonstop sequences of style and costumes that I love. Those little Irish newsy hats, and they've got razor blades in them. You've got certain accents. You've got a towering performance by Cillian Murphy. He's always getting over on his opponents. Each season has a new main villain. Adrian Brody's one in one. Tom Hardy's one in another. Sam Neill, Alan Grant himself is the main foil in the first two seasons. It is really fun to watch, and each season's only like 6 episodes long, so it's easily digestible, and it's very much what we've been talking about, and only I feel like a style entertainment way. And I don't mean to diminish the show and the writers and the hard people, the people working on this show, but you can just tell that it's inspired so much by what we're talking about, and just for fun. It is just such a fun show with Irish gangsters from the 1920s. And it also goes through what's going to have been when the series is over. The series finale is airing in June or July of this year. Okay. And then they're going to wrap it up with a movie after that. So I'm stoked for this new season that's coming out this summer. I'm going to celebrate with a glass of Irish whiskey because the main character, Thomas Shelby, he only drinks Irish whiskey. And he makes a point when he's talking to Winston Churchill and other historical figures that will show up in this series. I highly recommend Peaky Blinders for anybody that just wants to watch something fun in the gangster genre. And it's got World War I elements where the main character is having PTSD flashbacks to tunneling and the tunnel almost collapsing. And he's had all this trauma from fighting in the war with his brothers, that he's got a crime family that consists of his brothers and other close associates. So they're all really close, the people in this gang. And to watch them get over on their opponents as they present themselves is just highly entertaining. And they're running this horse racetrack ring, and I don't want to give too much away, but Daisuke, Peaky Blinders is a modern crime, great piece of entertainment.
Okay, thank you so much. How can one watch this?
It's all on Netflix.
Netflix, okay.
And it's BBC though that made this show, and then Netflix must have picked it up to distribute because it's all aired on BBC first.
Okay.
And I really respect that as a broadcast company for a variety of shows that I could mention.
Oh,
not
wonderful.
Gangster related,
Wonderful.
but Peaky Blinders.
Wonderful.
Sure.
That's great. That is wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Okay. I will have to watch that.
So entertaining. So I would be so excited to hear any words you had to put to Peaky Blinders, even in just the first episode. It is just raw, awesome entertainment. And some of the cameos, like I said, each season having a signature villain. That's very exciting, and all taking course over 6 short hour-long episodes.
Okay. I mean, you mentioned Sam Neill and you mentioned Alan Grant, so I would be remiss if I didn't mention. And of course, Jurassic Park the excitement is in the air. I know I'm a big fan as well. So let me say one of my favorite lines from Jurassic Park is when he says, to the little kid, human piece of toast. That line, human. I don't know why that stuck out at me. There's so many scenes in that film that would be so like iconic, memorable for whatever reason. That line when he says human piece of toast. Really, I never forgot that. I saw that in the theater too. That was a great film. Yeah, Jurassic Park.
There are scenes in movies where no matter how many times I watch them, I wish something different would happen, and I'm begging for something different to happen. And one of those is when young Timmy is banging on the back of the chair, urging his sister to hurry up with her expert hacking skills. I'd just do anything for him to run over to where Alan Grant and Dr. Sadler are trying to close the door, and he'd just pick up that shotgun and say, "Here you go. You can kill the raptor now." But instead, he's over there banging on the chair. And I'd just say, please stop doing that and go over there and help these people that are having a hard time keeping this door closed, because they can open doors.
Yeah, they can. Yes, they can open doors. You're right. I remember that was the trailer. Did you watch the trailer to that? Was this?
If I've seen the trailer, it's either on the special features or as a part of some AMC supercut.
All right, I remember because that was the trailer. It used that was such a huge thing. The trailer. I'm older. I'm older. I'm much older than you. So it was. I was a teenager or something. Early '90s, right? And so the trailer came out, and it was a big deal. They didn't show the dinosaurs in full, but it was a trailer with the music to Backdraft. Speaking of Robert De Niro, that's the film Backdraft. The firefighter film. And they had the really exciting music, and it was there's the last bit in the trailer was I think they overdubbed a line. It's not really in the film, but you hear in the trailer said, "Are we safe?" And it's Laura Dern turning, "Yeah, unless they figure out how to open doors," and it cuts to the shot of the Velociraptor figuring out how to pull down the handle, and it's in Jurassic Park. It was great, yeah. So that's great stuff. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's a bit of nostalgia. I forget. You weren't. Was it before your time when the first trailer hit for Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace?
Oh, I have such a history with Phantom Menace.
Okay,
I was around. I was in 3rd grade, and I remember it.
Okay.
And just to set the record straight, I remember renting it with my friend and watching it and really enjoying it. Phantom Menace on VHS. I distinctly remember watching it. I remember inviting a friend over. That was a great day. So despite all my criticisms, Phantom Menace at one point in time, you gave me a great day. And I will admit that.
I remember, yeah. So I was in, what is it? Maybe it was 96 or 97. So I was maybe high school, college, something like that when the trailers hit. And that was right, late 90s as well. So yeah, but when the trailer hit, that was a big deal. This is the build up to the film opening. And I remember then also before the film opened, they made a kind of music video that was on MTV at the time. And it was just clips from the film, but it was set to Duel of the Fates. And it had the bit with Darth Maul, and he's talking and he says, at last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge. And it had, oh, la, la, and all the shots from all the trailers of the film, and it was just clips and sound bites and things. But it was really cool because the music's awesome. Yeah, it was great. And it had, yeah, that was the music video on MTV. So but anyway, I'm sorry, going with, I'm so sorry. So I'm going totally off track. I apologize, but
being a part of the live stream discussions, and now this will be the fourth time you've been so gracious as to share your time talking to me directly. It's just really very, very nice. It's been great having your friendship in film, Daisuke. Seriously, I've just so much to talk about still
no, thank you.
wealth of information to discuss. And
Oh, no, you're too kind. Thank you so much. I'm so fortunate. I feel so lucky to be able to meet you, and yeah, I look forward to always to your comments and our opportunities to speak both on and offline. So the pleasure's been all mine, my dear friend. Thank you so much. Seth, my dear friend, our dear friend, thank you so much for your time. And let's do this again. This has been a really lovely, lovely conversation. It's talked about so many things. You've mentioned so many things. So I want to thank you very much for that, Seth. It's been so much fun. We'll do it again very soon.
Yes, it has been my pleasure talking to you about movies. And again, to anybody that stuck around to listen to us talk, I hope that you've had fun and you understand what it means to be a film fan talking to another film fan. I know all the viewers out there do. That's why we come to watch Daisuke's channel. It's just been a real blast, man, celebrating these movies.
Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you. It's a real honor. Really, the honor is all mine. So wonderful. So I look forward to talking to you again very soon. Thank you.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you.